In Titus 2, older women are commanded to teach what is good so they can help younger women love their husbands and children. On today's show, you'll hear from older women who will share timeless, relevant biblical wisdom and personal, profound life experiences to help answer your questions and teach what God says is good so you can be the wife and mother you were created to be. Welcome to another episode of Older Women Likewise.
Good evening and welcome to our program this evening. Thank you so much, Colleen and Lauren, for being with us tonight to discuss this question or this situation or this advice I hope we are able to give to younger women. Let's help each other raise our children. I've raised 3 children and thankfully raised them in the church or as members of the church. And you know, there were so many times that sisters and brothers too helped me with the children and was such a blessing. And I'd love to encourage other people, other women, and to do the same, to help one another. It does take, I think, more than just a mother to raise children. Obviously, a father is there too. I think the whole family of God, the whole congregation, can work together to help raise those children. And in my description, I wrote whether she's rearing one or a passel of young'uns. That's what my daddy always used to say, that we can help. And we want to tonight about some ways that we can help. We often hear people say the children are the future of the church. And that being true, we all have a part in that. We all have an investment there. So thank you, Colleen and Lauren, for being with us tonight. How are you both doing? Are things going well? Lauren, you're working with Sacred Selection these days, I know, so you're right in there with children.
And I sure am. I'm part of lots of people's villages these days, helping them build families and raise their kiddos. And it's a blessing and a delight every day that I get to do it.
Wonderful. Colleen, are you out of the children business these days, or
I just got back in. I have 2 new grandchildren, and so we're back at it.
Wonderful. It's just wonderful blessings in a family. That absolutely. So, well, I asked y'all, and Colleen thought it was a trick question. And after I had asked it and sent it out to the women that would participate, and then I began studying. I said, where is this group? I asked what are some Bible examples we see of other Christians helping mothers to raise their children? And the only one I could really come up with good was Lois and Eunice, mother and grandmother, teaching Timothy in 2 Timothy 1:5 and then chapter 3 as well. And we often do that. And I've done that. I have grown grandchildren now, and I've been part of that, helping to teach the grandchildren. Colleen, that will be your position for a while these days. Lauren, did you come up? Did I hear you say you came up with some other suggestions? Or
I did. I found a couple of places where I think it's at least implied that it's a group effort for sure. And I think Titus 2 is one of those places, you know, where we get the name for this podcast, because in Titus 2, he tells the older women to teach the younger women, among other things, to love their children. That implies to me that loving your children does not always come naturally, that loving them well sometimes takes some instruction and some effort. And so I have benefited greatly personally from older women in my life who have said, here are some ways that you can love your children. Here are some ways that you can show your children the right way to live their lives and the right way to, grow up to be functional adults. But I think we see an example implied in Luke chapter 2. So Luke chapter 2 is where we see the boy Jesus going to the temple with his parents when he's about 12. And he goes and they all, do their thing at the temple. And they head home, and it takes them a day of traveling to realize that Jesus is not with them. I have left my kids at the church building before. It usually doesn't take me very long to realize that they're not with me. But I think we can imply from that text that there was a big group of them traveling together. Even when they go back, it takes them 3 days to find a 12-year-old. Now, I have a 13-year-old, and if he wants to hide, he's gonna do a good job at it. But I think what we can imply from that is that they were traveling in a group, and you just kind of kept an eye out for whatever kids you had eyes on at the time. And that is certainly much more common in historical ancient Near East kind of cultures, where you would see family groups living together and multiple generations living together. This idea of each individual family living on its own and doing its own thing is very modern. And so I think we can imply from the scripture, at least, that at least in Bible times, culturally, people did help raise each other's kids. They helped look out for each other's kids, and they all had a similar outlook on what child raising looked like because they were similar culturally. And so they were able to say, when I was growing up, it didn't matter who caught you running in the church building, they were going to snatch you up, because they would say, your mama's not right here with you, but I know she didn't let you behave like that. And that's that kind of group effort that I think we see in the New Testament as well.
And what is implied in Titus 2, that the older women to teach their younger women, that we all have the same standards. We all are looking to the Bible for our standards. And so we can easily teach the others to do the same thing.
Another thing is that if you're older, you've been there. It doesn't say that the older women had to have had children, but they've been there. And I think that we can all, I hope everybody would agree that you're much smarter on this side of rearing children than you were before you had them. Agreed?
Oh, I was a perfect parent before I had kids.
Well, now that I've come through,
I knew exactly what it was going to look like before I had kids.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, I had a lot of theories, and I was mostly right, but I didn't know it yet. I didn't have proof yet. And now I can look back and I can tell people with confidence, don't let them do this. Here's what you need to do. So the older women have something that it's not saying younger women teach the other younger women. It's older women. So they've got something. They've got experience. They've got years. Maybe they have proof from their experiments with their kids. What was a really bad idea? What was a great idea?
When I had my oldest daughter, Beth, was when she was born, we lived in Gary, Indiana, and my husband was preaching at a congregation there called Glen Park. And Beth, I'm sure, would never have survived if it hadn't been for the older ladies there, because the first baby doll, either one, the first thing I put a diaper on was my child. I'd never played with dolls. I didn't play with, it just was not an interest of mine when I was growing up. And if they hadn't told me, well, she needs an undershirt on, she'll be cold, I was so oblivious. If they had not just stepped in and said, do this and do that, we'd have not survived. And it's just such a blessing to me, which is why I think that it's really important that we help one another, because like Colleen said, we've been through this. We have some experience. And we have, oftentimes the experience we have is from an earlier time when doctors told us to do things differently. Do y'all remember let them sleep on their tummies, let them sleep on their sides, let them sleep on their backs. They have to, and it went around and around. And when my my Beth, her child, her oldest, Ian, he had to sleep on his back. Well, I was used to the tummy. So we didn't have an argument about it. I just went, I babysat and put him on his tummy. And then I sat there and watched him so he didn't die, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, but we have to help one another. And I just benefited so much from that help. But I think the mother has to have the attitude of, I appreciate the help. I think it goes both ways. We have to help in a good way, but we have to receive that help too. I also thought about the women who attended with the birth of Benjamin when Rachel was dying. And they were all helping. That was all part of the helping raise the baby from the beginning. And I think about the women there in Bethlehem, Naomi's friends, when Ruth and Boaz had their first child, that they were all there, and they were rejoicing with Naomi, and just it was, you could just see that community that they had with one another. And we see it in the church too, in the early church, where they had all things common, and we see it in the expression, the family of God. What are some biblical principles then that apply here when we talk about helping one another, helping each other, and raising those children? Lauren, you got some that you thought of?
I do. So I thought of a couple. I think Ephesians 6 is obviously a place that we go when we talk about parenting. And it's specific to fathers there, but I think the principles apply to mothers as well. That ultimately it is the parents' responsibility to raise their children. And that kind of goes to some of the other questions that we're going to talk about. But always, 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 the ultimate responsibility falls back on the parents. And we need the help. And I'm a single mom at this point, raising 2 teenagers. I need all the help I can get. But at the end of the day, it's still my job. It's still my responsibility. And I think the other one that I thought of is that we speak the truth in love. And I think we've kind of danced around this a little bit already tonight. But anytime you have 2 people who feel strongly about something, sparks can fly pretty easily. And so, the young mom needs to be open to the advice that she's getting. And the older woman, the older mom who's giving the advice needs to understand that she's not just going to do whatever you tell her to do necessarily, and is giving advice. And I think speaking the truth in love on both sides will accomplish those goals.
And, if Beth and I had not had a lot of love and respect for one another, we would have argued. It would have been an argument, a constant. And as it was, it wasn't. She understood that I was going to put him on his stomach. And I understood that she was going to put him on his back. And we didn't argue about that. We just did. And like I said, I just literally, I'm not even figured it, literally sat beside him as he slept. So because I thought if he chokes in his sleep, she's just going to be so mad. But we didn't see a need to not have love for one another. But you're right. So many times, if you don't have love, it can be a really negative experience. Colleen,
absolutely.
You got a thought for us?
Yeah, I do. I keep reminding myself, especially with my kids, that they are in their prime time for rearing children. I already had my time, and they're the perfect people to navigate the world as it is right now. However, I have a lot of experience, and I tried lots of different things, and I did things that were maybe unconventional. I did a lot of things that my peers weren't doing that I felt like really were so much better, and they really did work out. So I have a lot to offer, but I always have to remind my kids, it's their world, it's their time to rear children. I was looking at a verse that I love. I love to tell my Bible kids in my Bible class. Mark 16:15 says, and he, that's Jesus, said to them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. And I tell them, You today are my creatures. And, it's what a great opportunity. I mean, how many opportunities do I get to teach somebody that doesn't already know the Bible like the back of their hand? And this is the first time they've heard it. I mean, how often? It's very rare. I try all the time, but not many. I don't have many takers as far as people that haven't studied the Bible before. So I don't know why people aren't just clamoring to sign up to teach Bible class, because this is it. This is one of the best ways to do that. And so you're going to teach those kids. And I used to say, when I was younger, I'd say, well, if those kids didn't go to Bible class, they would be fine. Their parents teach them. This is just icing on the cake. But as I get older, I realize they're two different things, and there is nothing like Bible class. And that's a really great example of the village or the church having your kid alone, and it's a different person. It's not the parents. It's you. We're open for business, rain or shine, and we're going to go through that New Testament or that Old Testament, and we're going to assign a little worksheet for you or a little report, or you're going to say a prayer, maybe something you didn't really want to do, get you out of your comfort zone. And it's a totally different thing. So that's one really good example of the village rearing those kids. And so parents need to realize how important that is and take it seriously when the teachers talk to them about maybe some little problems going on with their kids in the class.
Yeah. Absolutely. That is, I can remember things that I was taught in Bible classes a million years ago. And I still remember them because, like you said, it's somebody other than the parent teaching them. And that makes a big difference.
And so often you are probably reinforcing with those lessons are so daily. They are so everyday stuff that you, without knowing it, probably are reinforcing the parents' position when they argue with their kids at home.
Yeah, exactly. And you're working on that. I thought about Galatians 5, 13 through 15, through love, serve one another. And just like the Bible says, love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you're not consumed by one another. And then added in 1 Thessalonians 5:11, therefore encourage one another and build one another up, just as you are doing. I think as we help a young mother and a young father as well, as we're helping these parents with their children, we need to be encouraging them, not criticizing. We hardly ever get the positive result we're looking for if we start out critical. You're doing that wrong. And hardly ever, people say, oh, really? Thank you so much for noticing, So, I mean, we need that Oreo where we start out with the encouragement. We maybe tell the thing that we think that could be improved. And then, but look what wonderful things that you're doing with your kids. I always call it an Oreo. And just start, we encourage them so that at the end of however short of a conversation it might be, they feel uplifted and supported and encouraged. Lauren, some thoughts or ideas that you might have?
Well, on that note, something that I've been thinking about is there have been times when, and I mean, I think this goes back to speaking the truth in love as well. There have been times when someone has given me advice about what to do with my kids that was just dead wrong.
Yeah.
There have been times when, and I have developed the ability over my years to say, thank you so much for your advice. And that's all I need to say. Mm-hmm. And I don't need to necessarily take all of the advice that I get.
That's right.
But there are times when, what works for the average kid may not work for my kid. And if we can, as older women, give advice in that spirit, give advice in the spirit of, hey, this is what worked for me. It's something to consider. Think about whether this might work for your kid or not. But ultimately, it's up to you. And it's no skin off my nose one way or the other if you want to take my advice. Because there's a lot of pressure on young moms, especially young first-time moms. I remember the terror of, are they actually letting me leave the hospital with this tiny person that I don't have a clue what to do with this tiny person? Well, how are they leaving me responsible for her? But ultimately, mom and dad know their child better than anybody does. And I have the advantage of homeschooling my kids. So I'm with my kids like 24/7, literally, and I know them better than anybody on the planet. Some days I know them better than they know themselves. And that means that generous spirit of, hey, you're doing a great job. You might think about this if it comes up, but you know what you need to do, is so helpful to younger parents, especially.
Absolutely. One thing I've always found helpful, both in the school setting, because I worked in the public school, as well as with my daughters and their children, was to ask them, what are you working on with the kids that I can reinforce for you? What issues are coming up that maybe I can say something that might help, with the kid? Is it? And sometimes they would have something and they'd say, oh, he's been lying, or she's been just so rebellious, or, could you say something? And, oftentimes it's that outside person that can help, and without even realizing, without knowing the power maybe that they held. I always said if I wanted to get my pre-teenager to do something, I would ask a teenager, could you tell them that thus and so would be a really good thing to do? Because they'll believe you, So I thought about Galatians 6, verses 2-5, where it says, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone thinks he is something when he's nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one test his own work, and then his reason to boast will be in himself alone and not in his neighbor, for each will have to bear his own load. And I think that's the bear your one another's burdens, and each has to bear their own, is so apt when it comes to raising children. You can help me. You can give me advice. You can even hold them and give me a little break, when I'm, but I have to take them home, because they're mine to deal with. And so I think we have to remember that. And that's really good to say, this worked for me. You might give it a try. Colleen, you got some thoughts for us?
Well, thinking about advice, I've seen different situations where there were people in the church, different churches I've been a part of, where there were these people who were sort of the cool people that everybody said, oh, they're wonderful. And, really when I got up close and personal, I didn't think that their way of doing things was really the best, or I just really didn't. And one person, probably the person I think who I admire the most, who has the best advice about rearing kids, didn't have any kids. She doesn't have any agenda.
Yeah.
she tells it like it is. So I think that's one, being careful about who you take advice from. But I do think the bottom line is you need to be analytical in whatever you're doing, your career and, your marriage or whatever. Just take it and think about it. Sometimes when it first hits you, it's like, that's crazy. And then maybe you think about it later, and it's like, well, maybe we could do this, or maybe that would be the best. So at best, when it comes to advice, input from other people at best shows lots of better ways, keeps us from being narrow in our thinking. And at the least, input from other people shows how wrong people can be. But it does help you make a position. You get, when people have different things to say, you can at least have a position on what they said and what they suggested. And that helps you clarify where you stand. So even bad advice, I say, has some value. And I don't, be careful who you take advice from. Have your lead your inner circle of people who you really trust, who really know, who maybe you look at their kids and you're like, I really would like my kids to be kind of like that. I admire their kids. And, ask them what they did. Some people aren't very good at telling you. They won't tell you. Other people, they'll tell you. And just take it and put it in your hip pocket and see if you can use it at some point.
Yeah.
I wrote this book. It's called Tumbling Stones. My daughters and I wrote this book, and it is 12 ideas to develop spiritual grit in families. And what this is not the be all end all of advice on rearing children. And we say this, but we have some ideas about what people do, what we did, what worked and what didn't. And so this is a good one. There are all kinds of books. I wasn't one to really read a secular kind of doctory child rearing kind of book. I really did not do that. But I read books on self-discipline, money management, and behavioral management. So I think those are the ones where I really gleaned the best advice and then applied it to rearing my children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good thoughts. Very good thoughts. I think Lauren had a good point that when somebody offers you advice, I always say, just take it like you would a gift and just say thank you, and when you take it home, it's up to you what you do with it.
You gift it.
Yeah, I can remember my children, little kindergartners at school, would bring me a cupcake that they baked at home, and I would say, "Oh, thank you so much," and then I would take it home and throw it away because I didn't know where it had been cooked. I didn't know where it had come from. I didn't know whether it was germy or clean or whatever. And in a similar way, that's the way with advice. You may take it and say thank you, and as you say, store it away because it's going to get in your head anyway. And maybe at some point you might pull that out and say, this might work here. This is just crazy enough to work. And
now I would say the exceptions to that are when you are expecting that person to spend time with your child.
Yes.
So like a Bible class teacher, I'm going to say they are hesitant to say anything.
It's true.
So if they come to you and they say, really, could you have little Billy or little Sally do this? Take it seriously, because they don't want to stir up a hornet's nest. They really don't. So if they're coming to you, that there's probably a problem and you are oblivious. So that would be one.
Yeah, I agree. There are some people, like elders in the congregation, for example, that you really should listen to. You should just take time and think about it and study on it, and take it as as a important comment, and really analyze. I like the way you say we have to analyze. We have obviously. We love our children and we have invested ourselves in our children, but we have to be separate from them when we consider them, I think, and consider their behavior. We have to separate ourselves a little bit so that, someone criticizing your child is not criticizing you 100%, or telling you something that your child is doing that they ought not to be doing at all. It affects you, but we got to separate a little bit, so. I don't know if I made that make sense or not, but,
Yes.
And some advice, you just go, why would you do that? I remember telling one of Beth, I said, it's a really good idea when he's misbehaving if you sing. And she said, does that calm you down? I said, no, but it'll calm you down if you sing. It helps you a little bit. And it's like, she was like, well, that's great, sing, but it's one of those crazy things that you think, why didn't it help? But it always helped me, to help me to be calm so I could go along. There are, again, good advice, and we can offer advice. And I don't know if you've ever found yourself offering advice too soon or making a comment too soon and knowing somebody and jumping to a conclusion that then you wait a next time or two and you go, oh, I see the situation. And so you're glad you waited, or you may have thought of the comment and started to tell them, and then, and I think that happens sometimes. And when we have to be careful of that. Make sure if you find it, if you feel yourself that you need to express to this parent something that they can do or should do to improve, be sure you've studied it well enough in yourself. I see y'all shaking your heads. You have thought on that, or does that just make sense to you? So.
It does make sense. And something that I have seen as well is that it can be a problem when people rush in too quickly, and especially when people rush in and ignore boundaries that the parents have put in place. So I was so blessed when my children were small. My kids are 17 months apart, and my husband was a preacher, which meant I was juggling two children at once in the pew, and we had a lovely young woman who was a few years younger than me. And so early married, no kids of her own yet, but just loved children. And so she said, especially when the second one came along, she said, why don't you give me one of the kids during worship? And that way you've only got one to manage, and I can manage the other one. And I said, that would be amazing. Thank you. We had done that as well with another family that had triplets at the same time that I had my first. And people would line up at the door and wait and just be handed a baby and a diaper bag and say, here's your project for morning. But we had boundaries in place with that. One of my boundaries was that I don't want other people disciplining my children. If my child needs to be disciplined, I want that to be me. I want that to be my job. And she respected that boundary. And so there were times, and I would always have my ear to the back where she was sitting. And there were times I heard whichever one was back there pipe up. And so I'd walk to the back with the one I had, and I'd trade her and go deal with the child who needed dealing with. But I have had people step over my boundaries as well. And that can be so damaging, both to the job that I'm doing as a parent, but also to the relationship that I have. Now I can't trust you with my kids anymore, because I'm going, what other boundaries are you stepping over when I'm not watching, when I'm not there to pay attention?
Yeah.
And so it's so important that while we help, we remember that mom and dad are still the ones in charge, and they get to set those boundaries. And we don't get to, well, I think that's a dumb boundary for you to have, so I'm going to step over it, is not ever an okay attitude for us to have.
I hear that with people with the grandparents doing that, where the parents say, just don't tell your mom. Don't tell your mom you got to have Frosted Flakes for breakfast.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And when I would babysit, we had the understanding with my daughters, I would say, okay, so y'all, you know how I raised you. If there are things you don't want me to do that are like the way I raised you, then let me know now. And either I can do that or not do that. And but I'm not going to tell you I'll do it and then not do it, so you'll know where we are on this. And there were things they did that I didn't do, but the kids understood, and we just told, we made sure they understood, this is what grandma does, this is what mama does. And that's just different. Houses are different. And that's the way it is the rest of your life. I mean, businesses, way things happen in a business is different than the way it happens at home, people, relationships and all. So, but I think that open communication is what really makes the difference when somebody does something that you didn't know they were going to, or that is so different than the way you would do things. We can sometimes think we're helping and not be helping at all, making things worse. My mother would always say, well, I'm not going to spoil your children, because then when you get them home, you're just going to spank them, she would say, to make them.
Oh, yeah.
So she
just got them in trouble.
Yeah, that was her reason for following the rules. So, but I think most grandparents have the funny stories. Wallace would carry our granddaughter Zoe around when she was little, and she came and stayed with us like 3 weeks, and he literally carried her everywhere. And then when she got back home, she wanted her mom to carry her, who was
Nope.
Oh,
but we we always have so many stories, and you will too, Colleen, lots and lots of stories. So but what are some behaviors in giving advice that we should really, I think I put zealously, avoid when we're trying to, or when we decide we're going to help, or young mothers need help and they ask for help, and we offer that help? What are some things that we should avoid? And Lauren, you've given us a good one of crossing boundaries and not following the parents' lead. Some other thoughts or another thought, Colleen?
yes, I do. This would be a case where don't let something go on and on and on, and then just get fed up and then go to the parent and say, you deal with her, or your child needs to be disciplined. I can think I think this could happen in lots of cases, maybe where the grandparents are keeping the kids. Mm-hmm. And they've let it go, and maybe they've told them, now stop doing that. Now stop doing, and the kid doesn't listen. And then finally they just get mad and blow up and go to the parents or whatever. But I used to, when I taught Bible class years ago, I felt like it was better for me to solve the problem. There were, just on a rare occasion, we would have kids that really, really were disrespectful. They wouldn't stop talking. They would ignore the teachers. They would cheat, stuff like that you just can't let go. And so I would constantly correct, but then they do something else. Then I'd correct them on that. Then they'd find something else. And what I realized was that I was letting it go on too long, and I should have just nipped it in the bud. And if they couldn't get with the program in, say, 2 or 3 weeks, I should have gone to the parents way sooner and just told them, because the parents think their child is this wonderful little angel. That's what they're thinking. And he's really a thorn in your flesh every class period, or every time she comes over to your house. So early intervention, I'd say, don't let things go, and then because then the parents are mad because they think you're just being unfair. Yeah. Well, then they find out that they're wrong and that the child is causing a problem.
Mm-hmm. I think that's good advice. If you see something going on early on, go ahead and say something, because parents think everything's great. So, Lauren?
I think part of it too is you need to avoid contradicting what the parents have told them. And I've seen that so many times when I would tell my children, you may do XYZ. And they have an adult come to them. And I've taught them, if an adult that we know and trust tells you to do something, you say, yes, ma'am, and you obey. Like that's what we do. And I've specifically said this behavior is acceptable. And another adult comes without talking to me first and says, no, you don't do that thing. Mm-hmm. And now my children are confused and they're not sure because they've been put in a difficult situation. And so I think inserting yourself into a parenting type situation without checking with the parents first, mm-hmm. is a huge no-no. Just because the way that I raise my kids is different from the way that my sister raises hers, is different from the way that my friends raise theirs. You don't know what the parents have told their children is acceptable or not. And if you do, then yes, absolutely. If you see them, messing stuff up that they shouldn't or whatever, yes, step in. But if you haven't talked to the parents and you don't know, you can really risk jeopardizing the relationship between parent and child. Yeah. Because suddenly that trust is broken again. And the children are confused and don't know, well, mom told me to obey you, but you're telling me to do something that mom told me I could, or not to do something that mom told me I could. And now they don't know who to trust.
Yeah.
And especially in young children, that can be very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
From another perspective on that, we caution parents not to make rules or say that things are sinful that really aren't. And what I'm talking about, what I see most often is telling kids that a certain word is a dirty word and we can't use that word. I do understand why they do it sometimes, because kids will take a word and use it in a disrespectful way, but it's a perfectly good word. And so then the kid comes to Bible class and tells me I'm using a foul language. And I'm like, what? That word's in the Bible. So I think, and I've seen this, other people have said they've seen this too. You get into like a little colony of people, maybe in schools or in little private schools or whatever, and then, or in families, and they deem a certain thing as sinful, and they bind on people something that the Lord didn't bind. Mm-hmm. And so just being careful about that, being too strict, or, maybe just saying, you might say, there's nothing wrong with that word, except we just don't use that word in our family. Right. We just don't do that. Mm-hmm. Nothing sinful about it.
Yeah.
And that's such a difficult, nuanced conversation to have, especially with young children. I remember there was a time when we were walking, my kids were little. We were walking on a bike trail near our house, and some biker shot past us as we were walking, wearing nothing but a Speedo to do his biking in. And my children, darling, blessed church children, shouted at the top of them, "Mama, why is he riding his bike naked?"
Oh.
And so we got to start having conversations about different people have different rules in their houses about what they wear and what they don't. We don't go outside dressed like that. Apparently in his house they do. And he's a grown-up and he gets to. But that's such a difficult, nuanced. But it's important. It's so important to start that young and to start having those conversations.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I like the way you dealt with it. Not saying, not just saying we don't do that. That's not our rule.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, privately with my husband later, I said, "Why was that man riding his bike?"
That was crazy. I guess because he could.
Yeah, I guess so. One of the things I was thinking about, that as older women trying to help younger women, mothers raising children, we need to really be careful not to gossip. We need to be careful not to gossip about the one. Can you believe how her children are? I tried to help her, but she wouldn't listen. I mean, we have to, I think I've straightened them out now because I told her XYZ. We've got to really, y'all, we've got to really be careful that if I'm helping this young woman with her children, it needs to be between me and her and the Lord, and that's all. And whether somebody else says something or not, I just need to keep my mouth shut. And I just need to really be careful not to betray a trust, or not to talk about her or her kids and what they're doing. And I think this is just doubly important for a woman raising children alone, whether she's not married or whether her husband's not a member of the church and she's bringing those kids, trying to help. She needs to not feel like people are talking about her. It's hard enough anyway when you come and you're on your own with the kids and they're not behaving as they should. That's hard enough. But if you feel like people are talking about you, that's even worse. So I just think that's one of the things we need to do. If we help, do it just, between you and the Lord and the one that you're helping, and that's that. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think we've covered where I ask about some practical things that we can do. And I think one of the things we can do is, no matter who we see, whether it's in the church or whether it's in the community, when we see someone, a parent who's working with their kids and trying to teach them, encourage them and just tell them, you're doing a good job. Your kids are great. Even if all we can say is, we go to the restaurants and some of the children are just completely insane, but but a lot of you can always find something good to say about it's so good to see how much your children love you, or, you just,
That's a
we
good
can
one.
encourage, and especially if we can encourage women who are bringing their children up in the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking about Psalm 127 in terms of what we can do. And we think of it in terms of our own kids, but children are a heritage from the Lord. They are a blessing. And I think one of the best things that we can do in relation to other people's kids is delight in the children that are in our lives.
Mhm.
I love the encouragement that I get as a mom whose kids are still at home. I love that, you're doing a good job with them. But what I love most of all is your kids are so great and I love them and they're fantastic and I love to be around them. That is, any compliment you could pay me, that takes the cake every single time, because children are meant to be a delight in our lives. And it's easy to get caught up in, as a mom especially, it's easy to get caught up in correcting them and rearing them and forget that we're supposed to delight in them, that God gave them to us for good, and they're supposed to bring good in our lives.
Mhm.
And I love to do that with my friends' kids, with other people's kids around me, that they delight me. It makes me happy to see them.
Yeah. Yeah. We're in an older congregation. Most of the people are our age or older. And when kids come in, you can see the parents are like, oh, it's so quiet and all, my kids. And we always just say, oh, it's so nice to hear children, so whatever they're doing. And we try to, like you say, let them know we delight in them. Colleen, you have a practical
Some
suggestion?
practical ideas. I know this is probably not popular, but when they're in your care, whether it's Bible class or you're babysitting for them, or you're going to be with them without the parents, I think that having some backbone for, and gently say, no, now I told you not to look on somebody else's paper. No, you got to do this yourself. Just continue, gently say no. And because you don't want them to, maybe their parents have a high standard, and then, or maybe at school there's a high standard. Oh, I would never cheat at school. No, I would never talk when the teacher's teaching at school. And then they come to Bible class and they know that they can do whatever they want. So I think, it's tough love, and you got to find gentle ways to do it. But I think having a backbone with people's children, so that as we're all helping to raise them, I think it's only the parents are going to benefit too. If the kids learn that we have a high standard, I have a good Christian work ethic, I'm going to get that little worksheet done. I'm going to draw my picture as good as I can, and you just kind of gently prod them and don't let them wiggle out. And it's not popular, but I'm willing to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we all should keep that godly standard before them, the standard of the Bible, or the standard of what's right that they ought to be doing. So, excuse me. Thank y'all so much for being with us this evening on the program, and I hope that we've given you some things to think about to help others, younger women, as they're raising their children, and things perhaps you can do to help, so that we can encourage and uplift those that are mothers among us that are raising their children. So, Colleen and Lauren, thank you so much for being with me this evening, and we'll say good night.
Good night.